Welcome, Nick, to HowLeader. It's so great to have you here. And, it's great to connect, and we've connected and gone over some wonderful things together. Tell us, Nick Velasquez, a little bit about your successes, focus of the success and things you're most proud of.
Thank you so much for having me. Okay, let's think about successes. For me, well, a major one was putting out my book, and it took so long to compile. It took so long to do the research, so long to do the writing, especially. Sometimes discouraging. Writing a book is a very lonely process. No one's really there with you to give you the support you need, because no one's really going through the same thing unless you have other author friends, but you're mostly suffering alone. And then once the product comes out, when the finished book comes out, it's been so long since you finished that you no longer get that immediate feedback of, hey, all this suffering was worthwhile, because it comes out so much later. But seeing that book, I think it was one of the things that made me the proudest. And I think of Oliver Sacks. He was a famous psychologist, I believe, or psychotherapist, author of Musicophilia, and what is the other one that is very, very famous? The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, something like that. Amazing writer too. And he said something about the first book when it was going to come out. He said, I wanted the book to come out before I was 40, and because I wanted to be able to say, I lost my youth, but I lived done something with my life. I put out this book. And in a way, it kind of felt like that. So, yes. Yeah, a lot of has gone by in my life, and finally I have this thing that will stay with the world, hopefully for a long time. So that's probably my biggest success. Also, I built my real estate business, and that's something that I wanted to do since I was a teenager. And when it finally came about, the feeling of success, it was mostly a feeling of congruency. So in my mind, I was always this person that could be successful, that could start a business, that could do the investing, but the reality was not matching because I had nothing. So when I finally built it, and I remember my girlfriend at that time, she asked me, how does it feel that you're living your dream? And my response was, I feel like I'm me. I always knew I was this person, but I lacked the validation to say, yes, this I am. And so it reminds me of the story of, so when Walt Disney, he was designing, I think it was Walt Disney World or Disneyland, one of those two. And he died before the park opened. So his brother was opening up the park. And one reporter said, don't you think it's kind of ironic that on this happy day and opening the happiest place on earth, the founder cannot see it? He's not here to see it, he's dead. And the brother said, you're wrong. Because he saw it, you're looking at it right now. He knew every single detail of this park. Yes. It was just a matter of building it. So it felt like that for me. Like in my head, I was this person, I was this investor, I was this entrepreneur. But I didn't have the company, they didn't have the investment. So when all those came, it's like, I knew this, but now the world validates it. So that's kind of how it felt. It felt like congruency.
That's amazing. He saw it in his visualization and impossibility. He had already manifested and seen the whole thing. So
exactly. He knew every single detail of that park. He didn't need to see the bricks and mortar. He knew everything down to the last detail.
Oh my God. What an incredible answer. That's really one of the best answers I've ever heard. A difficult question. Oh my God. Wow. Incredible. Incredible. He's near and dear to me with all the commitment and work that he did and the miracle that he created. Just incredible. Yes. Wow.
Fascinating.
In real estate, a very powerful vehicle. I've enjoyed it a lot myself, and it's, I've always been investing in things. I finally took a break after a while. I had done much, and it's really a powerful thing to become successful at that. So you began to match up your life and what was showing up in it to who you knew you could be through hard work and stretching. So that's amazing. And tell us about, as far as, being able to write the book and be successful in real estate. People often have principles that make them successful more than anything, that I live by these principles, or these matter to me. And could you tell us a little bit about what they are for you?
Sure. So we can talk about different things. And before we're talking about some characteristics that I think are very important for anyone wanting to be successful, And we divided those into, sometimes we're forced to play defense and sometimes we can play offense. So in defense, you have endurance and you have resiliency. So endurance is about being able to take the punches and taking the pain and just holding the line, basically. Resilience is when you get knocked down, then to stand back up and keep doing it for as long as you have to. And when you do get to play offense, there are two things that are going to work in your favor. One is courage, is that ability to take risks, and the other one is discipline. So you don't want to be just a reckless risk taker. You want to have the discipline to do the work, to study, to prepare. So for me in real estate, I think my biggest principle, the one that has driven whatever amount of success that I have achieved, has been learning, continuous learning. That is really the undertone of my life. And with real estate, I had studied real estate for about 10 years before I made my first deal. So I was ready when the opportunity came about. And we can spend some time talking about this because I think it's really important. When the pandemic hit back last year around March, I had been waiting for a stock market crash for a long time.
Yes.
And I was just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then when it happened, I went into some financial vehicles that were not ideal. And I ended up losing a ton of money when I should have been making a ton of money. What I realized then is that I had been waiting for a crash, but I had not been preparing for a crash.
Yes.
Those are two very different things. When the crash finally came, I was not prepared. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I think a lot of people are going through life right now thinking, I'm just waiting for my opportunity, but are you preparing for that opportunity? Can you recognize it if it comes your way? And if it does come your way and you do recognize it, do you know how to seize it? Otherwise, it's useless.
Yes.
So I made tons of mistakes because I was not prepared. I had just been waiting. So, and that's one of the few times that I realized that I failed on one of my main principles, which was prepare, study.
Yes.
The opportunity will come. Before I did my first deal, I was analyzing hundreds of deals, doing the math, recognizing what was a good deal, what was a bad deal, why would it work, why wouldn't it work, even though I had no money to buy a property.
Yes.
It was just doing the math, doing the exercise, doing the reps. So one day when you really, we can put it in exercise terms. It's like, if you're waiting that one day, you're going to have to lift something really big, then you don't wait to have the strength that day, you build it until that day you have to, and now it's there for you. So there is this line or this quote that says, we don't fall to the level of we don't rise to the level of our expectation, we fall to the level of our training. And I think they use it a lot in the military. Don't expect magical things to happen when you want them. You need to build a foundation so it's there when you need it.
Yes. Wow, that is so powerful. And you mentioned courage earlier when we were speaking too, prior to this. And, I think walking through fear was something that, we started to share. Tell us a little about that too. Those are very powerful.
Yeah, I think courage is one of the most important. So I have a couple of years ago when I was kind of deciding what were going to be my two driving, let's call it characteristics for my life right now. And I wrote courage and discipline, like living my life with courage and discipline. And I think discipline that I've had, we'll come back to that in a second, but courage is the one that I've lacked most. I know that I haven't taken the risks that I needed to, especially just in the sense of being more outgoing, making more friendships. Like if you're on a networking event, like go talk to the people. I haven't had that courage in that sense. So I put it as one of the aspiring ones, because the other ones I feel that I've had a little bit more of, which is endurance and resiliency. So yes. I've had to deal with those for most of my life. So I think those are a little bit more honed than courage, which I felt like I was lacking. So I'm trying to add more of that courage and discipline in my life. Now, going to discipline, and this is an interesting one. So I work out every day. I don't take days off unless I'm very sick. And when I tell that to people, they say, you're so disciplined. And my answer is like, no, I am not disciplined. And it's precisely because I'm not disciplined that I need to work out every day. I can't do it 3 times a week. I can't. It doesn't work. I start skipping workouts because I'm not disciplined enough. And because I'm not disciplined enough, I'm forced to do it every day. So I know there's no excuse, no thinking. I just have to do it. So I found kind of the way around that is like, there's a great quote from Andy Warhol who says, it's either every day or never. Yes. And I found that in my life, that's how it works. I either read every day or I just don't read. I write every day or I don't write. I work out every day or I don't work out.
Wow.
So because I'm not disciplined, I need to do it every day. That's kind of my work around discipline. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's amazing. What a great distinction. So powerful, so powerful. And I was going to say too, with and you practices is something that you really covered in principles, and practices I know too that you had shared about. Hey, I'm very committed to what I say I'm going to do. So it's if it's 5 a.m. you're going to work out, you're there at 5 a.m. and you might be halfway through the workout and saying, "Oh, I'm not enjoying my workout today," but you did and you completed your workout. So you live as your
Yes.
commitment rather than your feeling or consideration or
Yes.
fears. Your word is your word, right?
100%. And I learned this from someone else where they say you have to build trust with yourself. So then you know that when you say I'm going to do this thing, you already have all this trail of successes and all these trails of you sticking to your word that you know you're going to do it. Because otherwise you start breaking that trust. And when there is time to do something major, now you no longer know if you will do it or not because you haven't built that trust. And that's built over time. So I try to work out every day. And for about a month or so, I've had the worst workouts. I've zero motivation, zero. And I'm not making progress bodybuilding wise because I'm not pushing myself as much as I could because I don't feel it, but I still go there and train. Like, I don't care if this is a horrible workout. I don't care if it's shorter than before. I don't care if I'm just dragging myself through it, but I'm here. I'm showing up and I'm doing it. And then the tide is going to switch sooner or later when I feel again some motivation, because we go through those phases and it's normal. Sometimes we just don't feel like doing things. And like, it's okay to say, you know what? This might not be the best workout, but I'm still going to do it. I might not get a lot of progress, but I'm still going to do it. Because then now I'm not in it for the bodybuilding benefits. I'm in it for the discipline benefits. I'm in it for the mental benefits, for the self-trust benefits. So if it's not for one thing, you're doing it for the other. And it's really important to follow through on those things.
Wow. So powerful. Amazing. Amazing. I love that. And such an example for our listeners. It's, God, yeah, I remember training I took and they said, we said, well, we're going to be there or we'll go, we'll start the training at 9, except if there's rain or if there's this. And, the trainer told a story about, he did a training and the training required him to come back for a guest event a week later. And he was an outward bound guide. And he would have had to hike or come out at 1,760 miles to be at that guest event for the human potential training. And he was like, oh, but I can't. I'd have to hike out. And the woman looked at him who ran the training. She said it would take quite a person to be there for that second event, wouldn't it? It would take quite a commitment. And the man, he was like, it just shocked him, but it really challenged his commitment. That like, hey, I'm capable of this. I can do it. So, okay, good. And I was going to ask too, who's been your best mentor or had the biggest impact on you and perhaps why, or just person in general?
Books. So I've had hundreds of mentors. Those are my mentors. I read a lot. So let's say in business could be Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. And then on navigating life, it could be Robert Greene, who wrote the 40 Laws of Power, The Art of Seduction. So yes, books have always been what you mentioned before, A Man's Search for Meaning. So that's a mentor. So I haven't had the luck of having someone kind of take me under his wing or her wing and showing me the ropes of the things that I wanted to do. So most of my learning and whatever I have achieved, I've done it through books, but learning through books. But that's just as valid as mentors as having someone else. I mean, you're still having those conversations, learning from these people that made mistakes and it took them years to put together this knowledge. And to me, books are fascinating because they're so cheap. And you get to have someone, maybe the knowledge that took them an entire lifetime to figure it out through hundreds of mistakes, failures, and all these things. And finally they condense it and they're for you for $120. Like, it's magic.
Yes, absolutely.
Crazy. And also, so I was reading this quote from Carl Sagan. He did the original Cosmos. And he said, books are such an amazing thing. I mean, you look at them, they're made out of trees. If you look at them close, there are a lot of squiggly lines just on the pages. And in reality, you're talking to people that might have been dead for thousands of years, learning from their knowledge and having conversations with them across time and across space. And he says that's the proof that humans are capable of working magic. So I never ceases to amaze me, like the amazing value of a book. It's just it's incomparable.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, great, great. And a lot of people see the success, and part of How Leaders, we want to show people and give them sort of an intimate interview of people about their books and their life, so that, because often they see the finished product and they're like, oh, I couldn't be a winner like that, or they have more gifts than me, or and I think it's important for them to understand that we all fall on our face, or or down on our knees, and have to get back up and struggle, and it's very difficult. You even mentioned before our meeting, we were talking about suffering, and being willing to suffer, right? Sometimes we're pain avoidant. We're not, we're not willing to throw on the fire and fall on our face and make a mistake. But if you would, tell us a little bit about, for you, what might be the most powerful or biggest thing that you ever, broke through, an event or a situation.
Yes. Several things. And before we get into it, something that you were saying, and this is 100% true, about we're seeing the finished product. So the whole premise of my book, and the starting of the introduction, it talks about that. It says most of the time we see the finished product, the end result of the people we admire. And that makes us believe that we don't have what it takes to do the same thing. But it's only because we're seeing the performance, now how they develop the skills. Usually there's a process behind it that we can follow, that we could also follow. And the analogy that I use is, think of a magic trick. So someone, let's say a magician, vanishes a card and makes it reappear in an impossible location. So as a spectator, you look at that and you say, I could never do that. That's amazing. But if they show you the method behind it, then you'll be like, oh, I guess with some study of sleight of hand and some practice, I could do the same too. So it's the same. It looks like a magic effect. You're seeing the finished product of a book, for example. If someone read my book and say, well, it feels well written, it seems like a good book, that guy is a good writer. No, it had to go through a lot of editing, several drafts, and it just takes a while to get to that finished product when people think this is so well done. And I think it was a phrase from Hemingway who said, well, I basically cheat, because out of 100 pages I write, I throw away 99 and I keep the best one.
Wow.
So it's like, and that's the people that think this guy is a magician, he's an amazing writer, is because he wrote 100 but only kept the one that was amazing writing.
Wow.
So that's one point on we always looking at the end result. About some of the challenges that I've overcome, my first deal in real estate, so like I said, I had been prepared for a long time, and the day I bought that deal, same day I was walking by the property and the neighbor came by and said, did you know that we're gonna get expropriated? And this was the very first deal I've ever done, and I had just bought the place like 2 hours before. And I couldn't believe that I was now facing this like legal challenge and all this other stuff, which was not disclosed by the seller because it was not officially, the decision had not been officially made, but everyone in the neighborhood kind of knew that it was going to happen. So legally I couldn't do anything against the seller, and now I had to deal with that problem, and it took many months of fighting with the government, and in the end I came out successful from that deal, and that's the one that I remember the most. And it's not the one that made the most money, it's the one that was the hardest. And somehow that taught me that I was not a coward, that I was not going to run away from difficulty. That gave me the confidence to go after other complicated deals, because I found myself in the darkest points knowing that I could fight back. Wow. So the failures and the challenges are what going to show you what you're made of. So it's important that we all have them. Otherwise, if you're protected your entire life, a minor setback could crush you. Like, we need to build strength. And I think there might be a quote from either Jordan Peterson, or I think he might have gotten from Nietzsche, I'm not sure. But it said like the number one rule is that you must be strong. And to be strong, you must become strong. Yes. So we're not born with strength. We need to develop it. And part of that is seeking out challenges and failing and having setbacks. Otherwise, we see it in sports when someone that is called the golden boy, let's say in boxing or in tennis, and they're always winning, and the day they lose, they don't know what to do. And there is just a downward spiral because they don't know how to recover from that. They've never lost before, and it crushes them. They fail and then they never come back. So we do
Yes.
need those difficulties. We need the challenges. We need the failures. They're an important part of the process. The point is not trying to avoid them. That's impossible. It's to prepare for them and be willing to develop the resilience to keep going.
Yes. Oh my God, so important. And yeah, because failure, it's even in COVID, I noticed people that had done very well and would hear these stories from some leaders that I did work with where, people that had they had an amazing system and they had won and won and won. And then everything got turned on its head and their incomes got changed. And emotionally, it was hard. One of my favorite authors, M. Scott Peck, talks about, if someone's never been challenged or taken a risk or been strong when everything is facing against them, saying, don't do this, or, talked about disapproval or teachers saying, you can't go be an astronaut. And someone says, hey, I'm doing it, and you hear those stories where their teachers are like, you could never do that. And
yeah.
Okay, there I go.
It does happen. And an extra point on that, it happens also with societies in general. So I was living in Japan when COVID hit, and it surprised me that everyone was going about their lives like nothing was happening.
Yes.
Everyone going to restaurants, just wearing the mask and keeping some distance. But all in all, the kind of like the feeling on the street was just the same. People were not sad or cranky or kind of in shock. No, they were just, okay, it's just another crisis. And then when I got back to Canada, because I had to return here, people were crushed. It was the same situation, but people here were crushed. Part of it is because it's a country that hasn't had to deal with too many crises and too many difficulties. So there was this really funny meme about South America when the COVID hit over there. So if you remember from the movie The Avengers, when Hulk, and they ask him like, so how do you do it? And he's like, that's my secret. I'm always angry.
Yes.
So the meme about South America is like, South America, how are you dealing with this crisis so well? And it's like, that's my secret. I'm always in crisis.
Yes.
So I had to travel to Colombia during COVID, and everyone is upbeat. I mean, no one was really pulling away from life. But in Canada, the feeling was dread. And I noticed this because just life doesn't put them in that many challenging situations. Japan, Tokyo has been burned like 3 or 4 times. It's been bombed. Earthquake has destroyed the city. They had to rebuild it so many times. And they deal with earthquakes. They deal with all this stuff. The Fukushima plant, they just have crisis after crisis. And it's like, it's just something else, but we're going to pull through. But here, the feeling was an absolute dread. They thought the world was going to end. And part of it is that they grew up not dealing with major crises.
Yes, it's it's interesting, and being challenged or dealing with suffering is such a important thing. It's a hard thing, but it's wow, such an amazing point. And I was going to say, with the book and with the blog and with the things that you give out there from a coaching perspective about how to learn anything or that you would want to learn, if you were going to mentor someone in life and really guidance to people that are listening, if they want to attract a person like yourself into their life for mentorship, what do you insist on from people? Like, who do they have to be? How do they have to be living and practicing before you'd invest time in them?
I think that is a difficult question because the process varies. Sometimes people start something and they're not the most disciplined, and somehow they kind of find it as they go along. So as a coach, it's difficult to tell who's going to do well and who isn't. Sometimes some people do really well at the beginning and then they slow down. Others go through it in reverse. So if the position of a teacher is complicated because they have to encourage everyone equally, because you don't know at one point the tables are going to switch. And the unfortunate side of it is that many teachers, many coaches, they give the most attention to the ones that show promise at the beginning. And then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where like someone showed aptitude for basketball, so let's do more coaching for this person because let's invest more in him or her. And now, of course, that person is going to improve faster because now all the coaches are giving the attention. So it's unfortunate that we tend to give more attention and more importance to the people that show initial aptitude, even though mastering a skill is such a long-term process. It could take 5-10 years. Yeah. So like showing aptitude within 2 weeks or a month means nothing. You don't know if these people are going to have the commitment to train. Like maybe they're more talented basketball players than LeBron James, but they just didn't do the work. They didn't stick with it. They didn't show up every day after a year because they got fed up. But maybe they could have had more talent. They could have been a better basketball players, but they just didn't go through the process. So sometimes the commitment, the people that show up and show up and show up, that's more important, but you can't tell in the first few weeks. So it takes a while for you to realize who's really committed. I have a friend, he's a 4th-degree black belt in Taekwondo, and I asked him that question, like, what is the difference that you see the people that make it through the process, that stick with this, and who are the ones that not? And he's like, we get a lot of kids that seem to be gifted for this, that catch it really quickly, and then they kind of lock off. They stop going to class and they don't take it as seriously. And sometimes there are kids that you say, like, this guy's never gonna do anything, but they show up every day, and then they become much better and much better and much better. So it's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. As an immediate reaction, it will be enthusiasm for the field, and then the other one is that willingness to commit. But the willingness to commit, it can't come from words. So it's something that you can only gauge as the process starts going along. So after a couple of weeks of working with someone, you say, okay, this person is really in it. Because it's very easy to say, yeah, I'm 100% in. It's very different when you have to show up.
That is so powerful. You're really talking about commitment to, I'm going to do it every day. I'm going to practice. Yep. I'm going to, and making a decision often too, which sometimes you mentioned early on when we were speaking, about suffering or feelings. Like sometimes, like our feelings, we don't want to commit, right? It's the feeling of, I'd rather relax. I'd rather do things. And I have a friend that hikes a mountain. He actually is much, much older than any of us, but he's 69, and he hiked a mountain last week. He got up at 2:30 a.m. and hiked a huge mountain, and and he says, it's who I become in the process. It's it's a lot of pain, a lot of discipline, but when I've reached that, there's freedom in my commitments through the pain and struggling.
There's a quote from Gurta, I think. I don't know how to pronounce it, and he says, what you get from achieving your goals is not as important as who you become by achieving your goals.
Yes.
And I try to keep that in mind the whole time.
Yes. He said.
Very valuable. Something to that extent, when we were talking about, as a coach, what would I be looking for? Something that is very important, and I've seen this in learning languages, is the willingness to suck, basically. The willingness to suck at first.
Yes.
So you see that the students in language class that are willing to make mistakes and look foolish and try with the native speakers and order in the other language and make mistakes, those are the ones that move really fast. And I've been on the other side. I'm always the one that is too shy to make the mistake. You want to have the language down perfectly before you speak, and that will never happen.
Yes.
You become good by using the language and making mistakes. So the people that have high tolerance for, let's call it pain or difficulty, and willing to have failures, that's one characteristic that is really important, that you're willing to go through that pain. And the second one that I was thinking of the most, so you have the pain tolerance, and then the other one is the humbleness to be taught, is the acceptance that there's more to learn.
Yes.
So people that really surrender to the process and say, like, I need to study this, I don't know it all. So it's like those willingness to make mistakes. It's okay that I look foolish. It's okay that I don't get it right away. And the other part is the commitment too, which is like, am I committed to this thing for the long term or not? Those two things really make a big difference. So I would look for that in the characteristic that someone is trying to learn something.
That is amazing. Wonderful, wonderful. So powerful, so powerful. And, and we were talking before, I think, and we were at a great, we kind of went deep on some things. And tell us about the time when you feel that you were sharing about, and, I know we talked about the struggle and, in the first home. Just walk us through that a little bit, what you discovered afterwards.
From the first real estate deal?
Yes.
So from the first real estate deal, it was so difficult, and I was just in constant stress for about 7 months or so while the whole thing unwound. And when I finally came out of it, it was just that realization of this was horrible, but then I know that I don't walk away, that I can face whatever difficulty comes to my way. Even if I'm not gonna come out successfully, I know that I don't run away from problems. And having that realization really gives you more courage, because now you're free to take harder challenges because you just know you're going to have to deal with them. And that's one thing that I've taken advantage. This is kind of a funny story, but let's say I'll be very shy about singing, and then I would sign up for a singing class and be like, okay, Nick from the future will have to deal with it. So I'll sign up in advance. Let's say it's in a month. And I sign up for that. And then I know, because I know I'm not going to back away from it, that I'm not going to quit the class. Like, I sign up for it, and I know, like, the guy from the future will have to deal with it. And I know I don't run away from things, so he's just going to have to complete it. And when the time comes that I need to start a class, I'm like, I hate the Nick from the past. The asshole keeps putting me into all these positions, knowing that I won't back away. And now I have to go through it. So many times I'll sign up for those things. I'm about to sign up for like some Japanese classes for like 3 or 4 months. And I know I won't be able to say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to have to go through it because that's just who I am. Yes. So it gives you that power of putting yourself into these situations where you know you're just going to have to go through them.
Yes, and perseverance is so important, because as you know, you've mentioned when, you know, we had first connected about people being willing to still walk through things, to still go when we fail, and how that made you stronger for your next real estate deal. And I had one I did that was this huge executive home, and when I was down in probably one of the most senior roles I've ever had, and I was like, this place is amazing, and it was the inspiration. But once I was in there, living there, I was like, for a while, I was like, wow, this is great, but it needs this and this, and it was an undertaking, and it carved me out, you know, and I had to keep recommitting to it. And you know, in failure, we commit and recommit, but I think I've heard a lot, and I've learned myself sometimes, like when something either is impossible or the signs don't show up, to fail fast, to let go and get on with things. And that's not always easy, right? Sometimes we still have to feel things. When do we kind of, you know, retry, and when do we kind of step and go on to the next focus? Like, how do we fail fast and learn, but there's times when we really have to change our course, and the universe shows us that.
That's a great point. And I've dealt with that over the past year when I was trying to start another business, because real estate is a great business, but it's basically a capital creation business where you down the line 5-10 years, then you create a lot of wealth, but you don't have a lot of cash flow. It's not a big cash flow business. And cash flow is what's going to give you quality of life, because it's what you can spend every month, and then it gets renewed in the following month. So I think people underestimate that part. They always say, I wish I had $1 million. No, you wish you have $10,000 coming in every month. And that'll give you a better quality of life than having $1 million, period. Because you're going to go through that million like it's nothing. It's crazy how fast we can spend money. So it's a much better alternative to have some cash flow. So I wanted to start some cash flow businesses, and I failed at 3 or 4 of them. And at one point, so I was working on this e-commerce store. Had been months. It was dragging a lot of money. It was dragging a lot of time, and is making that distinction between perseverance and stubbornness. Like, when do I need to push, and when do I just need to say, you know what, it's time to change? And the answer that I came up with is, it's okay to change the path, not okay to change the goal. The goal remains the same, to build a cash flow business, but maybe this thing is no longer the option. So let's switch. Let's see what else is out there. So then I switched my perspective. I started doing like building now a business that is going to be online courses and things like that. So the goal remains the same, but now I'm taking a different path, because I already exhausted my time. I hated what I was doing. And that was kind of a good measurement of like, am I at least enjoying this? And the answer was no. So it's not making me any money. It's spending my money. I'm spending my time, and I'm not enjoying it. So it's probably about time to change. Going on that subject, and I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and I'm sure like in your audience, there are a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think as entrepreneurs sometimes fall in love with the idea or the fantasy of the grind. And we have to remember that we do have the fantasy of the grind. So one day we don't have to grind anymore. So you need to put the post somewhere.
Yes.
It needs to stop somewhere. Otherwise, you're creating misery. So it's okay that, yes, you're working 80 hours a week, but at one point you just have to scale back. Otherwise, you don't get to live. It's just work. And remember that you're working so you can live, not the other way around. So I think that's an important point, because I was so obsessed in making my business successful. And then later it's like, but what have I done with my life? I've missed out on so many opportunities to socialize, to just have fun, to do the appropriate things that were for my age. And I sacrificed all of them for working. And sometimes I think I could have had a little bit more balance, and I chose not to. And now when I look back, because sometimes you think, if I just work really hard for the next 2 years, then I'm set. And sometimes it doesn't take 2, sometimes it takes 10, sometimes it takes 20. And maybe you look back and say, wow, I had the rest of my life to make money, and I wasted my young years doing it. So it's important to try to find a balance. And I think many times we approach these things as a starving person approaches a buffet. They think that they want to eat it all, and they want it all. And in reality, once they start eating, they say, you know what I really needed was a really decent meal that was tasty and that was fulfilling. So sometimes as entrepreneurs, we're dreaming of becoming billionaires, and maybe just making a very small fraction of that is good enough. And you realize that you don't need much more.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just that fascination. And it's because we're starving. We start from a place of having nothing. So we think we want to have everything. And then we realize we just wanted a share of that.
Yes.
To get to the share, we realize it's enough, and more is not going to improve my life much more. So I make fun that right now people no longer want to be millionaires. Everyone wants to be a billionaire. It's like, dude, if you make 50 million and then you make 1,000 million, so $1 billion, your life is not going to significantly change.
Yes, it's so
not
true.
Really.
It's so true. And and sometimes, profoundly, I notice the folks who've made such an excess in many billions, their biggest decision is, how do I give? Like, how do I give it away? How can I make a difference? And I think, we get a better opportunity to serve, but at what price? And it's interesting. Early on, I had a guy, when I was going to do something and I couldn't do it, or I didn't show up for something, and he looked at me and I said, well, I don't know if I can do this training. And he said, what's your commitment in the matter? And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, and he was part of a training thing I was doing. He says, well, if your life depended on it, you'd be there, right? And I was like, yeah, I'd be there. And he said, so what does your word mean when you give your, and I was like, okay. So, but the funniest thing is, down the road, someone that kind of knew of him and, what he did, said to me at one point, hey, are you crossing off your dream list? And when I was having a bunch of success at different times, and, he really refocused me on what was important. And I crossed off 2.5 dream lists. So right where you are, like, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have that experience. I'm going to go here. And that was good. And, there's a lot of risk in that too, even. And, taking, otherwise, I worked a lot at some points in time. And so, okay, excellent. And making a difference for others. And, you could have just gotten all these practices and kept them to yourself and not wrote the book and be like, hey, I know how to learn anything I can. Yes. Tell me about what helping others means to you. Do you get a feeling from it, like making a difference, focusing off yourself? And what are ways that you do make a difference for others?
For sure. With the book, I felt great that I was helping other people. And one of the things is that I wanted to find that book for myself, and it could have condensed time frames so much. So in my own copy, I have a dedication that says something like, I am sorry that this book took so long to write, and that you can't do a lot of the things that you wish you could have done, but at least someone else who opens this book might be at the right time to then achieve everything that he wanted or she wanted. So like there is a sense of sadness of, this book was not available for me at the time that I wanted to learn so many skills, that right now I either don't have the interest in them, or it might be too late, or I'm switching to other things. So those dreams were left behind, and were left behind because I didn't have that knowledge of how do I learn these things faster? How do I incorporate learning how to learn into my life? So those were lost dreams that now I hope other people don't have to lose them. And that makes me feel good. At the same time, probably the best review that I have for the book is this 80-year-old woman that says, I read the book and it gave me kind of motivation to pick up the piano again.
Wow.
And then learning chess again, and I'm gonna pass it on to my grandkids so they're better learners for everything that's gonna come in the rest of their lives. I'm like, wow.
Yes.
That was the thing that when I think about that review and I think about the pain of writing the book, that's one of the things that I say, you know what, it was worth it.
Yes, that's powerful. That's powerful. And wow. And in speaking of relationships, personal and professional, and what do they mean to you? Like, what do you bring to a relationship? How do you sustain them? What do you look for in them? And what can people count on from you if they're in your world?
So we can connect it back to what we were talking before. The entrepreneur falls in love with the fantasy of just the grind at the cost of everything else. And so I fell into that trap too. And now I realized that I didn't forge the friendships that I wanted. So you end up finding that, hey, I don't have a big of group of friends because I isolated myself working on my business. And I remember back in the day when I was learning real estate and my friends would call me up on a Friday night and say, let's go out. And I'm like, no, why not? I'm studying real estate. And like, what are you talking about? It's Friday, 10 p.m. Like, yeah, but I don't want to work for the rest of my life. So I'm trying to get this thing figured out. And there is true on both sides. Yeah, I mean, I was doing the right thing in learning and working, but I could have taken a couple of hours on that Friday and just enjoy my life too and find that balance. So now that I'm walking away a little bit more from the business side because I'm achieving some of the success that I wanted, now I find is, wow, I left behind all these other things and I was not paying attention to them. Now, how do I get that back? One of the interesting things, there's a quote that I love from Christopher Hitchens. It says, the bad thing about growing old is that you can't make new old friends. So old friends are only made through time. Yeah. And I didn't spend that time with them. So now I'm finding that I neglected a lot of the personal relationships. And in the end, that's what matters most in the world. So everything we do is for people. Whatever you're doing, your work is because there's people around you, either people you want to connect with or want to impress or want the love of. Everything we do, everything we are is interconnected with other people. So that's the most important thing. If there were no other people in the world, imagine you're the only person. You wouldn't do anything. It means nothing.
Yes.
Nothing. None of your life makes meaning. It has meaning.
I know.
The meaning comes from other people. And I that's a lesson that came too late for me. And now I was just trying to figure that out. And now I realize I have to spend more time talking to people and building those relationships and strengthening my friendships. Because I neglected them for so long at the cost of my business. And yes, it's nice to make money, and then you make it. So it's not that I'm ultra successful by any means, but I'm getting to the point where I might not have to work again. And that'll be great. But then I look at my friends around me and some of them are still struggling. I'm like, what's the point of making this money if I can't enjoy it with them? What am I going to enjoy it in? What am I supposed to do with this?
It's so true. It's so true. And I'm so glad to hear you say that you realize that too, because I have friends that I'm thankfully I guess I got it while I was young and while I've still been young, where at a certain, and it's never too late, right? But we can, I found that life is moments and there's days, and you can do more beauty and love in a day that stays with me through my lifetime, and others. But I think that, that's the thing I've realized, because this is fun and it's nice if you can get another zero on the tax return or someone pats you on the back and says, oh, you broke that record. But love, the most deepest love, looking into someone's soul, connecting with them in a way that you really never have connected with anybody. And that's sort of my, I guess, everybody has, I don't want to say the final chapter, but reaching the Holy Grail. And sometimes, life doesn't give us that honor, or, sometimes the growth is in, we don't align with people in a way that, or they don't say, oh, I love you too, or, and we're crushed. And so I think there's a lot of learning and tough things, and I think we have to get through things. But you said it in a way that I never could have said it, and I definitely have stretched. I've been out there maybe too much so, and one thing trying to really, be like, and but at least you can look and say, hey, I took the risk, But I'm so friendships, relationships, and it's what did St. Paul the Cross say? On the last eve of life, we'll be judged on love alone, and I came to realize that so truly, even in helping people. And so that's a diamond, so you can take that in everything you're doing, and I came to realize that. But as I've said, I've had a lot of great things happen, but I've failed too, and I think we just, it's what life hands us. We need to learn, and so I think but the fact is that we took a chance, we risked, and
yes,
that's the gift.
But we could do even a fun exercise, just very simple one. And for everyone listening, just think of the best moments in your life, and I guarantee you there are people in them.
Yes. Oh my God.
So that should tell you a lot.
Yes, it's so true. There are people in them. And although I love meditation and different things, I love the peak experience of people. Yes. And I've had ones, as time goes, the more I'm open, that blow me away, where I just get so present and so in tune. And I'm like, the universe brings us to amazing places. But yes, oh my God, so true. And we're going to talk more, you and I, about this, because some of the teaching might be on the being willing to step into risk, into things, and just,
yes.
And the funny thing, I'm polished like 98% of the time, but when I step into the deepest risks, sometimes, the good news is I'm all in. I haven't, I don't play it safe, but that's an awkward place to stand into. And I've learned that, like, sometimes either we can't go there, it's not, for us. And that's the humbling part of the universe. Even I used to think if I did enough good, then all the right things and people would show up in my life and say, I choose you, you're it, and it's just funny. But it's the sorting process, of why people, enjoy us and different things. And I was going to ask too, and to go from a very deep, beautiful, powerful note, which you were sharing, which I'm so amazed by, to de-stress, to have fun, to do things in your life. Like, what do you do? Even if things don't go well, like, how do you take care of yourself and have fun?
Wow. I think I'm not the best person to talk about that. I'm very stressed all the time, very anxious. I try to decompress. I think reading brings a lot of balance to my life. And I've noticed that when I sit down and read, because you can't do anything else really, you really need to focus on what you're reading. It's not like audio that you could be listening and doing all the things. Reading, you have to sit down and read. Period.
Yes.
So I think it's so immersive that it puts things in perspective. It calms down the world around me. So I feel like reading is one of those things that really brings me down. Like, it keeps me calm. That's one. What else? I don't think I do much. Maybe being in water is another one that really helps me. So being in water, and then nature helps a lot, but I don't go take trips too much. The Japanese have something that they called forest bathing, and it's just walking in between the trees, and apparently that has like some amazing effect on helping you calm down. So it would be those things. I don't really watch TV, not that much. Then exercising, the calm comes after. So once you've done the things. So I think there was a line, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it said that the tranquility or the peace comes from having done what you know had to be done. So the days that I do what I'm supposed to do, then I sleep at peace.
Yes.
It's the days that I don't do them, that I procrastinate, that I don't want to do whatever. Those are the days that it stays there, and it stays there throughout the night. But when the duty is done, when I know, like, I did the things that I wanted to do, that I promised I would do, then I feel I'm calm. Yes. So a lot of that is just kind of following through. It gives you that sense of accomplishment that also brings you calm.
Yes. Wow. That is so powerful. I love that. And And I was going to ask too, and in, growth and getting to take care of yourself, do you feel for people, I know you believe in reading and you learn things from reading and perfecting things. We look at professional growth and how to do things well. Do you put personal growth into that as well for yourself and suggest to people to really work at and work on their own personal growth too?
For sure. For sure. Personal growth is a big part of my life. And that's why I read so much. I'm always trying to be better. And a quote from Charlie Munger, that he said that he reads because no one can really come up with all the ideas on their own. No one's that smart. No one is that smart. So you read from others just so you can incorporate it to your lives, and reading, you're becoming better. So yes, I truly believe on the personal development, on the self-improvement side. I'm kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum of like people saying, well, just accept who you are. I'm against that. It's like you should have a love for yourself, but also a love for you who you can become.
Yes.
So Nietzsche, the philosopher, he talks about becoming who you are. So if you know you can be better, if you have it inside of you, then you should have this comfort by not being that person you can become. So it kind of goes against the self-acceptance, like I'm good, it's all good, I'm perfect the way I am. I think that's a very lazy way to see it. Like, let's put an example. If you're just a rude person and you just say, well, that's just who I am, I'm rude. No, you're being horrible. And it's even worse that you don't want to change. Like you realize that you're bad, and you have also the entitlement of thinking that you're not supposed to change. Yes. So if you know that there are some things that are not good about you, just go ahead and change them. I don't think we should accept or flaws. We should work to make them better. Otherwise, what's the point? So there is self-compassion, which is different, which is, okay, I have this problem, but it's temporary. This is not who I am, and I can change it. But it's okay. I'm not going to be too harsh on myself because I know that I can become the person I want to be, and now I'm going to work towards it. So there is this self-compassion and self-love of saying there are things that are wrong with me, that are bad with me, but that's okay because I can change them. And now let's go ahead and change them, but with that self-compassion, that self-love of, hey, we can be better. Let's become better.
Yes.
But I'm just against this is just who I am. I think people use that sometimes as an excuse to keep bad habits and just being terrible people. Like, well, I'm just like that.
Yes. I'm just
rude. It's like, no, man, that's not okay. That's not okay at all.
Yes. Oh, I know. And and it's interesting when we talk about people growing. Sometimes I see much more in people, and I want much more for them than they want for themselves, or people being rude or it can really hurt people. I've seen people be kind of, giving their heart or taking risks, and they get crushed, and it's just, it's never a fun experience. And people, when I did the LifeSpring trainings, they said, you never know whose lifeline you hold,
Yes.
And it's just people, and love being in action, right? Thoughtfulness, this and that. I mean, it's so important. I'm so glad you said that. I had an example of it yesterday. I attended a buddy of mine's birthday. He's actually the senior advisor for HowLeader, very successful guy. He's much older than all of us, and he's 70. But a woman came to his party that's been his friend for like 40 years, and she was the first woman to ever go to Phillips Extra Academy. Just so driven, so loving, so kind, and actually more than 40 years. She's, I think, 50 years, and he was so thrilled and overjoyed that she, they had stayed connected all these years, but that she made his birthday. But principles, practices, and she talks about taking care of herself and the things that, we're talking about. And I think, but friendships, connection, I think all those things are just unmatchable. And I just wanted to hit on that. And it sounds like you do a lot of growth and a lot of focus. And I want people that are listening to understand the importance of personal growth and the importance of even, what you're saying, like non-rude people. And I think in corporate America too, like, they become much more strict about those things. But, we can't change anybody else. They have to change themselves.
They have to change themselves. And it's okay if someone doesn't want to change. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that will try to force change on someone. It's like, if you want to be that, then that's okay. It's just that sometimes they will either deny it. It's like, well, I'm not that. Well, you are. And sometimes, but if they recognize it and they say, I just want to keep this, then, I mean, by all means, if you just want to stay that way, that's fine. But I understand you don't have to. And it's not a natural trait that you get to be proud of. So I think in the self-development or self-help industry, many times now is a very easy message to sell, saying there's nothing wrong with you. And if people can't see that, then that's on them. So shifting the blame has always been a very popular message in politics and in self-development. Like, everything's okay with you. So like, you're overweight. No, that's fine. The problem is that everyone else is obsessed with weight. Like, look, it's not healthy and you can take control of it, and it's not that hard. So you put some commitment, you put some discipline, and then you get what you want. There are things that we can't do anything about, and that's fine. Like, we can't grow taller, or we can't change certain things like the color of our eyes or things like that. But personality traits are mostly malleable.
Yes.
And if we don't like the ones we have, we can change them. But it's very popular message saying, you're okay just the way you are. You don't need to change. You're perfect. And it's everyone else's fault that they can't see that. That's just a very lazy, and in a way is a scam to get people's money to say, it's all good with you. The problem is everyone else. And they've done that forever. And they've done it in politics too. It's like, the economy is bad because of these immigrants, or the economy is bad because of this race or that race. And then everyone kind of rallies up. Like, yeah, it's not me. It's everyone else. Because no one wants to take responsibility. So deflecting that responsibility is one of the biggest challenges of self-improvement, unless we have to start taking that responsibility and saying, yes, I do have this thing. It's not okay. And I want to change it. Now you're empowered.
Yes.
But I wouldn't want someone telling me like, Nick, it's completely fine that you're cranky, because I am. No, that shouldn't be. Life is more for enjoying. So I work a lot on trying to be just more joyful and enjoying more time with friends and getting out of the house more. I shouldn't be content with saying, this is just who I am.
Yes.
Before misery.
Oh, it is. And a lot of people, it's midlife, they were like, oh, I didn't change, I didn't grow, or, late in life. And it's amazing that, what I've seen in the stories I've heard. And I love the actualization and the intensity with which you're saying this, because I think for everybody listening to, it's really living life so we don't have regrets too, and say, hey, I wasn't good in that moment, or one thing I do is if I screw up, I'll say, I'm really sorry, or I'll talk it through with people and make sure they're clear and I'm clear. Many people just are like, they just, it's like, so I think what you're saying is, growth and being the best we can be, we have to choose it. Absolutely. Any closing wisdom that you can share, that you want to share with people, or any other things, some summarization or anything?
So we can tie in with what we were talking, and this is kind of a strategy for someone looking to change, and mostly it goes in personal change, and it's thinking of the bad traits that you want to change as temporary. So it doesn't mean that you're like, don't make things personal and then turn them to be something temporary. So instead of saying, I'm just a sad person, I'm like, no, I'm just sad right now, or I go into sadness very often, but it doesn't have to be that way, and I can change. So it's the idea that we can become someone else, that we can become a better version of ourselves. That alone is going to give a lot of encouragement to people to say, okay, then I'm going to change. So when we think that something is fixed, we won't try to change it, and then we make ourselves the victims of those things. Yes. But when we realize that it can be a temporary thing, and that we have the opportunity to change it, and there is the power to change it, that opens up an entirely new world. So for me, I always thought like, I'm just cranky. It's just who I am. And then realizing like, I don't have to be that way. And that's not really who I am. I just somehow adopted that trait as if it were part of my personality, when it's not. It's just a behavior.
Yes.
So let's start switching that a little bit, and then realizing that I could become more joyful and more outgoing and all these things. Then it opened up a world of possibilities, and then it becomes a choice. If I want to be alone in my house, then that's fine. But I know that I'm being alone in my house because I want to, not because no one wants to hang out with me, because I'm just the negative person in the room.
Yes.
So knowing that you have the power to change and that most things about your personality can be changed for the better, it doesn't mean you're going to go from a complete introvert to a complete extrovert, but you can go way higher on the spectrum. And most of the things in our lives, they can change and they can improve. So just knowing that it's possible sometimes is enough for people to be empowered.
Yes, yes. Giving love in as many places as you can and doing the thing or things that scare you the most seem like to be the quickest pathways to growth and change. And
Yes.
I love your overview. Oh my God, just incredible.